They say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, so hopefully 10 pictures might be worth 10 times that. I'd like to start today's video with a story and an analogy that I think the vast majority of my audience can relate to. It starts with this picture in kind of your upper right here, and it shows a feral cat next to a tick. Now, a story from my youth was a friend of mine and we were out, a group of us, and encountered one of these. And this thing was having none of our presence and decided to go after one of my friends. We were young, and it sunk its teeth and claws into the leg of my friend. And for the life of us, we could not get this thing off of his leg. The more we tried to pull, the worse it got. We would stop and the cat would kind of not squeeze as hard, but boy, we touched it at all and it would make my friend scream. Now, one of our parents heard the commotion, came out, saw what was happening, and thank God that this particular person knew exactly what needed to be done. Grabbed the kid and tossed him in a nearby pond, little retention lake. And it was March in the Midwest. And I've never seen a cat bounce in my life until then. The cold ice water made that cat release. No amount of pulling or gripping or anything we tried could get that cat to let go. See, that cat is a great analogy for the U.S. corporations in Venezuela. They had sunk their teeth and their claws into that country in a way that any attempt to extricate them by force, they were going to visit an immense amount of pain on the people of that country. And you see, Chavez knew this when he got elected. And he knew that they couldn't be ripped out, that there had to be some major catastrophic shift in the environment of the country to get them out. What he did, pushing out these corporations and the wealthy usurers and profiteers, was akin to throwing the country into an icy cold Midwestern lake in the winter. Now, you see, the analogy of a tick is that while the cat had really nothing to gain and it was operating out of fear, a tick has something to gain. And that's where the analogy kind of is more like some cross between a cat and a tick. Anybody who's ever had a tick knows you have to burn them off. You can't pull them off, because they have these things that keep them gripped. You see, this is where the image of DC comes in, because they were reaping all sorts of benefits by controlling the political narrative about what was happening in Venezuela and making you believe something that defied logic about that country. Now, here on the left, I've shown, and we're going to go back to this, what's really happening in Venezuela and what these two leaders did, and parts of the story that DC doesn't want you to see. Lower left, we covered this about a year ago about this girl who went out, and she was one of the more blessed of Venezuela, and did this wonderful Christian thing of buying up all of the groceries that she could, going home, putting together goodie bags, cooking arepas, and then her and her boyfriend went out and videoed themselves going around and handing out food, handing out goodie bags, doing all this kind of stuff. You see, that's the solution that DC does not want you to know that we have in this country if we were going to try to take our country back. Would the corporations of this country visit an immense amount of pain on us as citizens if we were to try to take our country back and get rid of them? Oh yeah, absolutely they would. They would make a financial nightmare of this country, just like they did in Venezuela. But the solution will be the people. I don't hate my country. I hate the vile filth that occupies its halls of power right now, lower right. Many of you think that I believe in what the DC version of socialism. I don't. Here's the part that the vast majority of my naysayers, and that's what this video is pointed toward. This is the part you don't get. Venezuela did not finance its country by taxing the rich and giving it to the poor. You see, that's DC socialism. That doesn't work. I agree with you. That's a terrible idea. What Venezuela did is Venezuela said, wait a minute. The resources of our nation belong to our people. Therefore, we're going to, as a government, get them out of the ground, put them on the open market, sell them, and then we are going to finance our country that way and give the profits of that to the people. See, this is what the corporations didn't like because, you see, they had laid claim to those resources. Chevron, Texaco, all the big oil companies. That's very different than taxing the rich and taking from some and giving to others. That's the difference. But DC doesn't want you to know that difference, naysayer. People out there that believe in corporate capitalism, the thing we have now, this neoliberal nightmare that's brought us to $23 trillion in debt. You're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. How did just some random soldier that 6 years prior had been put in jail for attempting a coup, how did he go in 1998, stand for election, and win 60% of the vote in a three-way race? And then in the following 15 years, over here to the right, do this. Drop inflation from 47.8 to 27. Drop unemployment from 10.6 to 5.5. Drop extreme poverty, 10.8 to 5.4. Increase spending, meaning money gotten from the resources of the country spent on the people, from 11.3 to 19.2. People receiving a pension, meaning the elderly, the disabled, the people who could no longer work. Instead of this tiny little upper crust of 387,000 people in a country of 25 million, 2.584 million. People that had access to higher education, 47.7% up to 71.6%. These are the facts. This is what the electoral map looked like in Venezuela in 98 when Chavez took power. The red is him. The dark red is where he won greater than 60% of the vote. With no control of the government, wasn't an incumbent. You see, they had a two-party system that was bowing the knee to the corporations, and they got rid of it. Nobody can answer this question why way back here in the middle, 98, this is when Chavismo, evil, terrible, horrible socialism, took over. Why didn't it happen? Why didn't this black line happen back here? Because what happened here in 14 had nothing to do with the governmental system changing. What it had to do with was an attack of Saudi Arabia and DC on Venezuela to hand those resources back into the hands of the criminals in DC who wanted it. No one can explain this chart either. Here's 98. Here's when Chavez took over. 2008. Here's the U.S. financial hiccup. Here's the GDP of the country going up to 2014. How is it that evil, terrible, horrible socialism, if it always fails every time it's tried, would do this? And I agree with you. Let me say this again. If it's socialism that is based on taxing the rich and giving it to the poor, you're right. It fails. But that's not what Venezuela was doing. And it's the story that DC doesn't want you to know. What they did, the fundamental change in thought that happened in Venezuela was that, wait a minute, the resources of the country don't belong to private corporations, cannot be allowed to belong to private corporations. and allow those wealthy few to then control the entire country, pulling the levers and pushing the buttons in D.C. That was the amazing thought change that happened, the thought revolution that happened in D.C. Pardon me, in Venezuela. This is what they don't want you to know. The last sovereign Christian nation on earth with no ties to the World Bank, with enough wealth to stay out of debt, a country that honored God and Christian moral principle in its constitution, more so than we even did. This was why. And I'll say it a third time to my naysayers. You are right. DC version of socialism where you take money away from the rich, or your perceived version of who the rich are, and then take that and then try to buy votes with social programs by giving it to the poor. You're right, absolutely. Fails every time. Terrible idea. Should never happen. That is not what is happening or happened in Venezuela. Social democracy says that those corporations that we see now in our country, that wealth never belonged to them. It belonged to us. And pumping the oil out of Texas, out of the Bakken, out of everywhere else, all of the wealth that we have gotten in this country should not be at the highest levels. It should be at the level of the people. Giant farms where the vast majority of farmland in this country is controlled by just these few little handfuls of people and some foreign ones. We need to pour the cold water on that feral cat. We need to take a lighter to that tick in our country, that neoliberal tick, to get our country back. And yeah, will there be pain? Absolutely. Will there be media people rolling out the first time we would try it and show all of the pain and destruction and angst? Yes, initially there's going to have to be. If we're ever going to be free, if we're ever going to rip that feral cat off our leg or get that tick off our neck, yeah, it's going to hurt. But that's just the way it is. So revolution is not for the faint of heart or those who are so enthralled with mammon that they can't see their way out anymore. And many of the people of Venezuela have been deceived as well about what's happened there and the cause of their suffering. So who are you going to be? There is one thing I'm going to ask people to do here at the end. And I don't normally do this, but there is a gentleman on YouTube that is doing the work of God literally every day of his life. His name is Jose Cruz. He came to my channel a long time ago when we were first talking about Venezuela and started asking questions, and he lives there, and he also has, I believe, a brother here in Miami. And if you could go to, he changed the name of his channel. It used to be just Jose Cruz channel. Now it's XRP Junior Venezuela. They have had to make some fundamental shifts in how they do finance in their country. And cryptocurrency saved them. No, I'm not here to sell cryptocurrency anymore. I tried to talk to people about it, not going to. Up to you, pray about it. Whatever your situation is, you do what you feel is best for you. But this guy goes out every day, and we have taken in donations, and we have sent money. And he uses it, and he shows the videos of him doing it, feeding his neighbors. I would like everyone, if they could, to go to, and I'll put first pinned comment, not the description. I will put his channel, XRP Junior Venezuela, to go subscribe to his channel. And if you have it in your ability to do, send what you can. And you can see the man is not enriching himself. The man is taking this blessing and using it for what God would have us do in our lives. It is an amazing, amazing thing to see. These are good people. These are decent people. These are Christian people. If the people of America, the people, us, not our government, could sit down with the people of Venezuela and compare notes, we would have a completely different version, especially those of you who think that I'm some evil, terrible, horrible leftist. You would have a whole different perspective on the reality of the situation. Big business ain't going to save you. Capitalism ain't going to save you. The love and the support and the camaraderie and the fellowship of your neighbors is the only thing that's going to save you or save us. Pray for each other this season. Like, share, subscribe.